All right, so a couple of weeks ago, we had some reports coming out that Joe Biden supposedly supported the TRIPS waiver, which is this proposal that was put forward by India and South Africa at the World Trade Organization, which basically relinquishes the COVID vaccine patents so that a lot of these other manufacturers around the world can produce their own generic versions and distribute them widely to the general population. And Joe Biden got a lot of positive coverage for this, and it seemed like, oh, he's maybe moving in the right direction. But we looked into the finer details, we looked into the fine print of what they were saying, and what they were actually really saying is, we support negotiations around this. And listen, if I know Joe Biden and the incentives that he has in favor of the big pharmaceutical industry here in the United States, then any negotiations around that waiver would significantly water it down if they're going to actually produce anything. And so since these reports came out, I haven't seen any updates. I don't know if they're making any progress on these negotiations at all. Joe Biden recently donated like 20 million doses to the rest of the world, and it's like, this is embarrassing. It's not nearly enough. We can do so much more, and yet we are refusing to. And one of the byproducts of us prioritizing vaccine profits over human lives is this. As COVID ravages poor nations, pharma vaccine profiteering has created 9 new billionaires. Quote, these billionaires are the human face of the huge profits many pharmaceutical corporations are making from the monopoly they hold on these vaccines. So a new analysis on Thursday shows that pharmaceutical companies' immensely profitable monopoly control over coronavirus vaccines has produced 9 new billionaires since the start of the COVID-19 pandemic, which continues to ravage developing nations left largely without access to the life-saving shots. According to the People's Vaccine Alliance, a global coalition of public health and humanitarian organizations, the 9 newly minted billionaires have a combined net worth of $19.3 billion, enough to fully vaccinate all people in low-income countries 1.3 times. So we had this recent report that came out from Public Citizen where they estimated it would cost around $25 billion for the United States to vaccinate the rest of the developed world. $25 billion. We spend, I don't know how many times, do the math in your own head. We spend over $740 billion on our military at least every single year. So over $700 billion we're willing to spend on bombing civilians across the world and maintaining these ridiculous military bases and our absurd bloated military budget and these failed F-35 fighter jet programs. We're willing to dump billions and billions into that, but we are not willing to dump a measly $25 billion into vaccinating the rest of the developed world. What does that tell you about our priorities? Well, it tells you that our priorities are on creating vaccine billionaires instead of actually vaccinating people so that we can move to some sort of a post-COVID world. That is the priority that the United States has and has been maintaining up until this point, and we see the products of this. I mean, Moderna CEO Stephanie Bancel and BioNTech CEO Ugur Sahin have amassed the largest fortunes of the newly created billionaires, with a wealth of over $4.3 billion and $4 billion respectively. Others on the list include Moderna founding investor Timothy Springer for $2.2 billion, Moderna chairman Noubar Afeyan for $1.9 billion, and Casino Biologics co-founder Zhu Tao $1.3 billion. So these are the people, these are the main ones who have profited the most of the 9 billionaires that we're talking about. This is what we're doing right now. Okay, so when in all my previous commentaries, when I've been talking about releasing the vaccine patents, and you know, that's not a silver bullet. There are many factories around the world who are standing ready to produce these vaccines and could potentially produce hundreds of millions of doses. So the idea that there are not vaccine ready production capabilities ready to go right now should they release the patents is this is 100% true. Okay, so there are actual factories around the world that are ready to produce these vaccines like that as soon as the vaccine patents are done with. So instead of doing that and getting this a move on so that we can actually vaccinate as many people as possible, we're instead creating 9 new billionaires during this pandemic. And listen, this isn't just with COVID. This one just happens to be related specifically to the COVID vaccine, but we've seen all of these reports coming out of how many trillions and trillions of dollars America's billionaires have added over the course of the pandemic. I mean, this crisis and this, gets into the idea of disaster capitalism, where all of these capital owners profit off of these crises that pop up every once in a while and use it to further consolidate their wealth and power. This is a perfect example of this pandemic has been. I mean, we've seen people like Jeff Bezos increase their net wealth by over $100 billion, just like Elon Musk has as well. Meanwhile, we had to go through a period where we had hundreds of millions or tens of millions of people unemployed for periods of time, people having to line up in food lines, go to food banks who have never had to do it before in their lives. And meanwhile, we were having these fights over, a $600 check or a $1,400 check to send to average people. Meanwhile, this is what they're actually doing. Okay, so when our government acts as if they are acting in the best interest of the people, or they are acting in the best interest of public health, understand that that is absolutely not true. Our government right now is jeopardizing our ability to have the potential to move past COVID, because when you have gigantic countries like India, which is still suffering massively from the COVID outbreak there, and you have entire continents like Africa who are potentially not going to get the vaccines for years and years because of our privatization of this entire process, it tells you exactly where our priorities are. And our priorities so far continue to be prioritizing vaccine profits for these billion-dollar corporations and newly minted billionaires than actually saving millions of lives. So it's absolutely grotesque. It continues to be the underlying story of the world right now that still not enough people are talking about. I don't know how this is continuing to fly under the radar. We are literally talking about the difference between allowing variants to continue to pop up all around the world, allowing millions of people to potentially die over the next couple of years, or simply releasing the vaccine patents and ending this profiteering. I mean, it's not like they haven't already made billions of dollars. All of these companies who produce the vaccines have easily made billions and billions of dollars of this so far, and they just want more. They're just endlessly greedy and willing to do so at the expense of literally the entire rest of the world. So that's the situation that we have right now. Joe Biden still on the wrong side of history on multiple fronts that we could get into in his candidacy, or in his presidency, but this is just another one of them, okay? Allowing for the profiteering, the amassing of billions of dollars in wealth in the hands of a few individuals at the expense of the rest of society.